I've been called a nihilist a few times by various people leaving comments and that kind of thing. I never saw myself as a nihilist, so I thought I'd actually have a look to see what it means. And yeah, I guess I could be labelled a nihilist. And I think people, when they say that my work is, as one person put it, relentless nihilism, they might mean it in a slightly derogatory manner, meaning that I'm some kind of miserable bastard who just negates everything. Well, I'm not. I'm not miserable. I hate to disappoint you, but I'm not. Generally speaking, I'm fairly happy. And hopefully you'll see why as we go through this podcast. The idea of nihilism is some guy with a swastika tattooed on his forehead, biting the heads off live chickens and permanently angry. Well, I'm certainly not like that. And so I had a look on Wikipedia, and they included the Buddha as a nihilist, and also Immanuel Kant, which I found interesting. I don't think Kant is a nihilist, actually. But anyway, it's on Wikipedia, so it must be true. And they didn't put Spinoza, and Spinoza definitely has nihilist leanings, which I'll go into a bit later. So anyway, the upshot of all of this was that I suddenly thought, yeah, fucking hell, I'm a nihilist. I've got a label at last for what I do. So this podcast is called Happy Nihilists, because if you're really a nihilist and you really understand it, it will make you extremely happy. You will not be this, sort of archetypal or stereotypical figure of some angry-looking person who's desperate and depressed. No, real nihilists are extremely happy. And I'm sorry if that offends some people who believe they're nihilists, and who believe that to be a nihilist you have to be angry and depressed and unhappy, but I don't see why you would be like that if you really were a nihilist. So, in terms of the general meaning of nihilism, the usual meaning is that a person who is a nihilist denies all meaning, sees no meaning in anything. How wonderful to be that free. So, meaning. We're all desperate for meaning. We're desperate for it because our kind of sort of sad little egos want some kind of validation. So let me ask the universe if I have any meaning. Hello universe, it's Martin here. Is there any meaning in my existence? And in fact, do you actually even recognize what the word meaning means? Nothing. I guess it doesn't really understand the word meaning. I think meaning might just be a human concept that we impose on the rest of the universe, thinking that it has to operate in the way that we think. So, I think it is a purely human term, but just to make sure, I have a couple of my dogs. They sleep on the floor, typically near my chair. So let me ask the dogs. Hello dogs, is there any meaning in the universe? And in fact, do you understand the word meaning? No. I could have asked them in dog language, but even in dog language I don't think they would have a concept of meaning. So I think the whole idea of meaning is an entirely human construct. And because, we're egocentric little bastards, then we kind of project that onto the universe as a whole and believe that it has to have some kind of meaning, some purpose, some final cause. I'll get onto that in a moment. So I think we can safely say that this search for meaning is nothing more than a search for significance. There are plenty of people who will cater to your need in this respect. If you want significance, then you can switch this podcast off and go and buy any number of books on God's purpose for you. The meaningful lives of the world's 7 most successful people. Whatever bullshit title somebody's dreamed up that they think will satisfy this need, because that need is always there, and there are always millions of suckers who will buy that kind of stuff. Because inside they're so frail and needy. They need someone to tell them that they're significant and important. The only person you need to be important to is yourself. It's terrible, isn't it? So I think this meaning thing is really a search for significance, and in turn that's just an ego thing. So let's talk for a moment about final causes. A final cause is the reason why we do something. Now, believe it or not, there are people around who believe that the universe exists for some purpose. It's the ultimate egotistical act to believe that your sad little craving for purpose and meaning is something that is meaningful for the universe. That the universe has some sad little need for purpose. I think the world doesn't exist for a purpose. I think it just exists. So, people invent all kinds of final causes. So one final cause may be, I exist for my family. Oh yeah, what do they exist for? Well, they exist for their family. Well, I'm not being critical of that. If that's your thing, then go do it. But there's always a price to pay. Whenever you find some sad little thing that you can pin your hopes and dreams and aspirations on, it will extract a price. So if your family is the reason why you are alive and do whatever you do, then you have to make sure that you keep on good terms with your family, that you don't go outside of its boundaries. Most families are fairly kind of claustrophobic little things. You cannot think or do certain things outside the things and actions that are approved by a kind of consensus within the family. And it doesn't matter what you choose as your purpose, it will always impose that kind of boundary on your behavior or thought, because that's the price you pay for security. I produced an article, it's on the website, about security and freedom. You can't have both. If you want security, then you abandon freedom. So, if you're in your nice family unit and everybody's agreeing with everybody else because that's the price they pay, don't start whining about the fact that you find it a bit claustrophobic and you'd like to break out of it. That is the price you have paid, so pay it and stop whining. But if you want freedom, then you're going to have to risk pissing off members of your family because you are thinking and doing things that they might not approve of. Well, fuck them, but, that's the trade-off. And you find people who say they want to make the world a better place. Well, go do it. The world gets along fine without any of us in actual fact. It doesn't need us to make it a better place. And as history has shown many times, the people who try and make the world a better place usually end up making it a worse place. The world is getting along just fine. There's, again, another podcast. That's the way God planned it, that 15,000 kids a day will die from malaria and polluted water. That 127 million people were slaughtered last century in religious wars, in ordinary wars, in various kinds of persecution, in various ideological purges and so on and so forth. 127 million, not a small number. But this is the way God planned it. So, but there are a lot of people who believe that they can go out into the world and make the world a better place. If it's only by smiling at someone. Well, your smile at someone may not be well received. They may not want you to impose that kind of obligation on them to smile back. They might not want your fucking smile, despite all the little memes that say, a smile costs nothing. Well, actually it does. The person you're smiling at might be in a state where they don't want to see a smile. Again, it's an egotistical thing. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with smiling, but, at least do it fucking honestly or authentically instead of being like some smiling robot trying to make the world a better place. Some people believe that the world is evolving to a higher spiritual state, whatever that means. Because I haven't got a clue what the fuck that means. And again, there are any number of people who will write books about how the world is transforming into a superior state. And, Eckhart Tolle's book, The New Earth, or whatever it's called. Just a straightforward, very blatant and crass appeal to people's need to believe that things are moving forward. In some ways, the world, or the nature of our existence, has kind of moved forward. We don't die from, well, at the moment anyway, you don't die typically from an infected mosquito bite. It doesn't kill you, you get antibiotics or something. And we don't typically die because our drinking water is polluted, although some people still do. But generally speaking, the world is not a better place because there are more and more people taking tranquilizers and antidepressants. More and more people committing suicide. And I don't need to give you all the numbers. So, these sort of vain attempts to give the world meaning. I exist for my family. I want to make the world a better place. The world is evolving to a higher spiritual state. And a lot of people actually might not buy that. And so what they do is they get lost in their ambitions. I'm going to be the most successful bullshit merchant that ever lived, or I'm going to be the most successful horseshit trader or something. Any ambition that takes them away, that distracts them from staring the reality in the face that there is no meaning, because meaning is not a word that has meaning in the universe. So most people cannot face a meaningless world for whatever reason. Personally, I don't understand it now. I have to admit I've been in that state in the past. And it sounds like I'm being horribly critical. In one way I am, but in another way I fully understand that people need to exist for their family, to try and make the world a better place, to get lost in their ambitions and so on, because as John Lennon said, whatever gets you through the night. But to be able to see that the world has no meaning, what a freedom. If you want freedom, then kind of meditate on that one. So a meaningless universe is the greatest of all gifts, Because by implication, it and you have no preloaded agenda or schedule. There's no program that's running that says you have to do whatever. And there's a long discussion there that could go off into free will, but I'm not going to go down there. We have no free will, but free will is a different thing to there being a meaningless universe. But yeah, that's another discussion. So there's nothing, there's no schedule, there's no agenda. Do whatever the fuck you want. So, you know, you don't have to sing the praises of God all day, every day. It's not required. You don't have to say your 5 gratitudes every morning. You know, thank you God for my shitty job, and thank you God for this lump that's appeared on the side of my head. Oh no, those are not gratitudes, are they? Thank you God for, whatever it is. The dog shitting on my carpet. You don't have to be consistent. You don't have to make plans. It's a wholly free, meaningless, purposeless universe with no end goals. It just is. It just exists. And as part of that just existing, you just exist. So you can empty your head of all the programming and all the bullshit that's being pushed in there. Now I want to finish on Spinoza. This is going to be fairly short, but I will be producing a whole podcast on the Patreon channel about Spinoza the Nihilist. Spinoza said many things that would be like nectar to a nihilist. And in fact, his appendix to part 1 of the Ethics is just, it's just pure bliss. For Spinoza, there's no beauty. He says in a couple of places, there's no beauty or ugliness. It's pure Tao. In the Tao Te Ching, Lao Tzu says, the minute you've created beauty, you've created ugliness. So, a few things that you find beautiful, and then the rest of the world is like, shit, I don't want to know all that stuff. I don't want to see it. So we get attracted to a bit of eye candy, so people travel thousands of miles to look at a vista or something. And they look at it for 2 minutes, then they get pissed off with it, and they want to find another thing to look at. It's pathetic. There is no beauty or ugliness, there's just what is. It's pathetic to be a slave to beauty. Waiting for nature to lift its skirt a little bit so you can have a look. Ooh, look, that's quite pretty, isn't it? All those flowers. Yeah, but what about that pile of dead dogs over there? Well, we don't like that bit. So no beauty or no ugliness. This is Spinoza the Nihilist. No merit or blame, because the universe operates according to fixed laws, and because we don't have free will, how can you have merit or blame? According to Spinoza, there's no order in the universe. There's order in the way we see it, but that's not the same as there actually being order in the universe. There's no good or evil. There's what's good for you and what's bad for you, or evil for you. There's no absolute good or evil. And in fact, all these kind of searches for meaning, God is a good God. No, God is not a good God. Spinoza explicitly says that in his works. God is not a good God. That would mean that there's something that God has to obey, and then he wouldn't be God. God doesn't give a shit about you or me, because God is not a person, not a thinking thing in the sense that we are. So it's silly to expect God to be good in the way that we would like him to be good, or nature to be good in the way we would like it to be good. If we want a reasonable, tolerable life, then we have to use our reason. That, again, is a whole other story. And I'm just coming up to 20 minutes, so at that point I'll finish this. I personally am a happy nihilist. To be a nihilist doesn't mean that you are some miserable bastard complaining about the world day in, day out. If you're just a miserable bastard complaining, it's because you are not a nihilist. You have some expectations that are not being met. So even expectations are part of not being a nihilist. Do not have expectations, and then you won't be particularly upset when things are not going in the way you think they should go. Truly egotistical thing, if ever there was one. So join Kant, join Buddha, join Spinoza, join probably a number of people, and become a happy nihilist. It's the only way to be.